Hello. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Um, write fantasy. Obviously, I've always loved fantasy, but I also do a lot of short stories, and the short stories tend to be more of the romance and thriller variety. I'm not entirely sure why, but so far that's kind of been the split. The novel I'm working on is fantasy, so I think in order to get a break from fantasy, I tend to dabble in romance and thriller just to keep all of my skills or the craft a bit stronger and more flexible. But yeah, so I am currently based in Scotland and I have been writing for not very long, actually. Not seriously, I should say. I think I started writing this book about um, a year ago. I think I started taking it seriously. It's definitely been there in my brain for at least 5 years, just kind of rattling around. And I finally decided to actually try to get it out to the world so that other people could enjoy it as much as I enjoy it. But yeah, and I think as far as writing goes, I used to love it in high school. Like it was one of my favorite things to do. And then whether it was life or a certain high school teacher that most people tend to have, my self-confidence kind of just got shot and it was like, I can't be a writer. I'm not qualified to be a writer. Like I don't know anything about writing. And so I just didn't think about it for a very long time. But it was always kind of there and I've always read books and been an avid reader and just immersed myself in stories. And yeah, so I've just come back around to it to actually try to contribute to the things that I love so that hopefully one day someone will love my book as much as I have loved others' books. Yeah. But,
Yeah, I hope so. I think
yeah.
everybody deserves that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's definitely my goal because I obviously I used reading and books as a way of escapism, which I think a lot of people use, and it's a way to just go somewhere new when you either can't, like especially during COVID and things like that, when you literally couldn't leave the house, you could just be transported somewhere else. So I'm hoping to bring my world into that to give that to somebody so they can also get transported somewhere new and fascinating.
Yeah, I love your bit about being transported somewhere like new and fascinating. Escapism. It's something I try to do a lot, and it's something as a reader that's what I'm typically looking for. I mean, obviously you're talking about fantasy, magical worlds, but even now I'm reading a book and it's set in LA. And I still feel like I'm transported there, even though it's a contemporary memoir. And I love that. And if I can't do that, I'm not as interested. I
Yeah,
was going to ask you as
definitely.
well, Caitlin. You said as well about you at school and you lost your confidence. I think it's kind of normal. I mean, I'm from the UK as well as you, and I didn't lose my confidence as a writer. Just that I don't know. I feel like the UK education system sometimes for English, certainly, it's not very creative. And it's not about getting a bunch of young kids to enjoy reading, first of all, and secondly, to, write different things. It tends to be quite regimented and, it's not cool writing stories. None of my teachers encouraged me to write stories. My first story was called The Color Red, and this is when I was, 11 years old. And it starts off with me like pretending to fire a machine gun. It was about the Falklands War, and the point I'm getting is that the school thought I was crazy just writing about war, but I was like an 11-year-old boy, So
Yeah.
maybe a
Oh
bit
yeah,
like
11-year-old
yourself.
boys love war.
I was
No, they
just been I've
definitely.
just been watching Rambo,
Yes, of course.
So it's not. I don't think it's unusual.
No, no, I think it happens to a lot of people. And if you don't have that ambition or belief in yourself at that time, it's so easy to just put it to the side and focus on other things, whether that's university or traveling or starting a family, things like that, that they could just kind of get in the way. Uh, but I know. I
Yeah,
definitely,
definitely.
yeah, I definitely, I kind of, it took me a while to stop seeing writing as a hobby. Like, I now take it more seriously. And I think that's when the switch kind of changed. Like, it went from writing short stories for fun, and I do really enjoy writing this novel. Like, I'm writing it for fun as well, but I'm also now have the goal of trying to share it with other people to get it published, which I think just kind of you have to have that shift in your brain to go from writing for fun to seriously writing so that other people can see it too.
Yeah, that's the thing about sharing it with other people. You've got to be prepared to look foolish and feel
Yeah.
foolish. I sometimes feel foolish sharing my work or telling people I'm a writer,
Oh, I know.
but
It's the
that's what you
scariest
got to
thing.
do.
It's so
Yeah,
scary.
it
Like
is.
it's like taking a piece of your heart and just like showing it to someone and being like, please be nice to it. And half the people who are going to read it aren't going to like your book, and that's something that you have to also come to terms with because it's not going to be for everybody. Like, I've read plenty of books that weren't for me. They were great books, but I didn't enjoy them. And it's the same. My favorite books, some of my friends DNF'd. And I'm just like, what do you mean you DNF? That's my favorite book in the whole world. So yeah, trying to keep yourself open when you've shared it with somebody else is really, really hard.
Yeah, I was saying last week on the last podcast, I said if you've got to look at negative reviews as a positive thing. If you're getting some, negative reviews, it shows that your book is real. Like it's, I mean, I don't mean to say it's fake or anything like that. I mean, like real books have people reading it that don't like it. Sometimes those people are jerks. Most of the time, it's just not for them. But it shows that it's real, and like the rating, for example, on Amazon is reliable as well. I was going to ask you as well, Caitlin, about you mentioned about writing short stories. Like how many have you written, or how long have you been writing these for?
So far, I've probably written, I want to say it like seriously written where I've actually written them for a purpose is probably only about five or six. But writing short stories just for fun, quite a few more. I try to take part in different types of writing competitions. There's the NYC Midnight Competition. They run a couple different ones, but they have a short story competition in January, is usually when it starts. And that was the first one where I had actually started, like, I submitted it to someone else and I wrote for a purpose. Um, and luckily, I got through to the second round, which was nice. I didn't get through to the third round, but it was just a good experience. And you get feedback from the judges as well on like the pros and cons of your story. And so, yeah, so I've done a couple for various writing competitions, and I find that short stories help you practice things that you don't get to do really if you're doing a novel, at least not for a long time, like the ending. Like if you're writing a novel, it's going to take a long time before you actually have to write the ending, unless you're one of those people who starts with the ending and then writes the rest of it. But when you have the short story, like you have to take it from the beginning to the end in a nice, concise way. And so you kind of get to practice those types of things, and like word count limits also give you that extra challenge where you can't be too flowery. You can't just keep putting words onto the page. You have to be concise and like get your story across within those the certain word limit. So I've really enjoyed doing that because it kind of helps strengthen my craft. And because it is a challenge, the ones that I've done before, they give you a different genre to try. So on the last challenge, I had to do a romantic comedy, and I found it extremely difficult. Like I've done romance ones and I really enjoy romance, but for some reason turning it into a rom-com made it really hard for me. And I think because I had that word limit for that one, I was just like, I don't know how to turn this into a rom com. Like my romances are always like they do have a hint of thriller in them, so it's always kind of that type of romance rather than a rom com type of romance. So yeah, the short stories they help broaden your skills and your craft, as well as showing you things that like I don't know if I'll write another rom-com because I found it so difficult, but maybe if I feel like trying to challenge myself again and without an actual word count limit, I might give it a go. But it was surprising to find a genre that did take a lot of thought and um, yeah, difficulty to try to get out because I was just like, this story's not coming. Like usually I get a prompt because you get a prompt and you're like, oh yeah, I've got ideas, like it's going, I can do this. And I got that prompt and I was like, I have nothing. There's nothing going through my brain right now. So like this is so weird because usually I at least have some idea of what I'm gonna do with it. But yeah, so I definitely recommend short stories and short story challenges to everybody because it's yeah, good practice.
Yeah, short stories. I mean, you said you've only written five or six. I still think that's a lot. Like, some people, of course, have written probably hundreds. I've only written, I think, one short story. Like my entry into novel writing was from poetry. And when I was doing a master's degree in creative writing, my professor, he noticed that my poems are like narrative driven. So all my poems, they tell a certain story. And so I was writing sonnets, I've always preferred for poems, short poems. So maybe a bit like short stories, I got used to writing about something, saying what I mean in a very short time. So it got me used to the structure. And I remember before I started writing my first novel, I was telling myself, it's just like a sonnet. You have your introduction, there's the bit in the middle, and then it's coming into the ending. I know obviously novels are a bit more complex than that, but it was something in my mind at the time that allowed me to think, I can do this.
Yeah, and you definitely you have to try to
And yeah, rom-com, I wouldn't know where to start. Oh,
you have to try to frame it so that um, you can wrap your head around it and keep it going.
next, maybe you can just explain or just discuss like about the book you're currently writing. Obviously, if you don't want to reveal anything, you don't have to reveal it. But yeah, I'd love to know what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, so my current novel is a supernatural fantasy set in a Mesopotamian inspired culture. So I wanted to do something that wasn't the normal English medieval setting for fantasy. Because as much as I love it, and as much as most of my stories are set in that, a lot of the stories are. So I wanted to do something slightly different. And I also wanted the story to be warm. You know what I mean? So like a lot of the medieval books, there's winter and it's cold, and yeah. Whereas this one, they're set more in a desert, temperate climate, and so it has different challenges to it. And yeah, and so it's full of elemental magic as well as gods and goddesses, and my main character, she has the ability to see spirits, and she is pretty much thrust on an adventure when her dad gets possessed one day, and so she has to find a way to save him, pretty much. And yeah, it's a book that I think essentially is about overcoming your fears, or like doing something even though you're afraid, because like parts of the book, which I can't entirely reveal, I'm so sorry, involves her having to do stuff that she doesn't want to do or that she's too afraid to do, but she has to do it otherwise. Yeah, big stakes and all that jazz. But um, yeah, so I have always loved fantasy as well as paranormal stuff, so ghosts and vampires and werewolves. I'm a true millennial, and I grew up with all of the Twilight hype and things like that. And so I wanted to write a book that mixes the two together. And so it's set in a whole new world. It's high fantasy, so it's not in anything like our world. But yeah, so and it's part of a duology. So this is the first book out of two. So there will be a second book after this. And yeah, so I'm very excited, and I'm excited to share it with the world. That currently the title has not been revealed. I'm hoping to reveal it in the next month or two. So yeah, lots of exciting things to come.
Yeah, well, it sounds really interesting. I've got to say, like I'm listening to the plot and I'm listening to. I like the character where they have to overcome some problem in order to obviously accomplish a goal at the end of the book. My personal opinion, the best books are like that, certainly for this kind of genre anyway. I don't like it if characters are just a bit too, there's nothing to solve. I tend to think that people, us, we're trying to solve our own problems every day. And that wouldn't stop, for example, if there was an apocalypse or if there's a fantasy, we're in a fantasy world, that kind of thing. So yeah, great. Sounds great. Yeah, I like the Mesopotamia thing. Um, I think that's good. You're right about fantasy. I think it's one of those genres, and I love fantasy too, but the medieval times has been overdone. And I think the best writers out there at the moment are trying to find some new injection, shall we say, into this to make it a bit more interesting. Okay, interesting. Yeah, you said you like the paranormal. What is it about the paranormal that attracts you so much? Whether that's in real life or whether that's in fiction.
I don't know if there was ever really a thing. I have just loved it since I was a kid. It might be partially because of my dad. He used to love paranormal stuff. And I think I just grew up on the Ghost Hunter shows, the TV shows, as well as like what was it, Mythbusters and things like that. So I kind of grew up with these like what if it is real type thing. And I think part of it, because I've also really loved horror. Horror is one of my favorite genres as well. And the idea of fighting something that you can't see or something that you can't touch or what have you is just slightly terrifying, because if there's an intruder in my house, I at least have somewhat of a chance if I get like a chair or a baseball bat or something. Whereas if you have a ghost in your house, like there's nothing you can really do against ghosts. So I think that element of it has always really intrigued me, because there's just, yeah, it just gives me chills, because I'm like, you can't do anything. You're yeah, stuck. So yeah, I've always really enjoyed the paranormal. And like I said, since I am a lovely millennial and I grew up with Twilight as well as things like Charlene Harris's books, so like True Blood, things like that. So vampires and werewolves, and yeah, it's just, I think just having that otherness, like being able to become powerful, I think, is probably the thing that I was really attracted to. And that's kind of slightly in my book, but I like looking at the two ways that that can happen. So people who want power to become like powerful people, or the people who are riddled with fear and they really just want to not be afraid anymore, like that kind of type of power as well. So being able to be like able to defend yourself and not be afraid when you walk out your door, versus the people who are like, I just want power so I can take over the world type of power.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the different ideas of power also come into play in the book too.
Yeah, I like that, the contrast, especially when you say about paranormal and like, if there's a bad guy attacking you, well, you can pick up a chair and you can hit them with it. But if there's a ghost in your house, it's moving objects, you're like, well, what do you do? Use a crucifix? I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it like that actually, but that's kind of cool. I think for me, when I think about the paranormal, and the TV shows you mentioned, yeah, I've watched them, like Ghost. Is it Ghost Adventures? I think I've seen Ghost Hunters. When I was a kid, I loved the X Files. For a TV show, Twin Peaks. I mean, it's like this idea of, you mentioned otherness, the idea that there's something else out there that's inexplainable. Like we think about sci-fi's, other planets, for example, but this is like different dimensions, things you can't see. It makes you think about what happens when we die. Nothing or everything, something. So yeah, I really like that. I haven't written actually any paranormal stuff, mostly because I can't think of anything original,
That's fair.
and
Yeah.
or reasonably original. I mean, I've got one idea, but I've got this idea of like maybe a black like teenager that would go to he's in trouble with the police and stuff, and he would go to like like an ancient house, a mansion or something like that, and his mom is there. Maybe she's a caretaker or something, and it might be about the things he sees, but I don't know anything beyond that, and it's not slated for me to be written anytime soon because I've got just a few more things that are more concrete in my mind and written down. But yeah, it's really cool, I think.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you as well. What would you say are the themes in your books? I mean, beyond like you mentioned about fear and overcoming fear. Is there anything else?
I think a lot of it is self acceptance as well, um, because obviously the main character is slightly odd in the fact that she can see spirits and things like that, um, as well as things like family versus found family. So what makes them, like, is it blood over water type stuff? So yeah, making connections with others, and yeah, as well as loyalty. I think that kind of gets touched upon as well, and just how far someone would go to save someone they love. um, yeah, I think those are kind of the main themes of the book, which is yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds great. I know you've been, Caitlin. You've been on. I think at least one or two. If it's more, please correct me. Like writing retreats. Can you tell me, like, just like why you decided to go on these? What were they like, and what you learned from them, please?
So the first writing retreat I went on was actually rather recently. It was in October, November of last year. And this one was with other people. So it was set up by our editor, or an editor, um, Eden Northover, in case anyone's looking for an editor. But she put it together. So she did all the logistics and the booking and sorting the food and things like that. And we pretty much just got to show up. And she had a whole schedule laid out for us. So we had like built-in writing time. We had workshops to do to talk about different types of stuff about the craft, like showing versus telling, things like that, as well as like just group discussion type time. And I would recommend it to anybody because you get to meet other writers for one. And sometimes that can be really scary because I went on my own without really knowing any of the other writers who are going to be there. And so that can be a little bit of a gamble where you're just like, oh no, I don't know anyone. But all were there for the same reason. And I think when you go there to work on your book, to learn from others, you can get a lot out of it because we ended up sharing tips and tricks. We ended up sharing names and contacts, like other types of editors or cover designers or beta readers, things like that. So you get to start to build those lists as well. One of the girls, or one of the authors, she had already published her first book out of her trilogy. So she self-published. So she told us kind of like how that worked, all of the things that she found surprising, the things that were actually quite difficult or took a long time to do. So having her there was also really nice to just start to get an idea of what self-publishing looks like versus traditional publishing. And yeah, and I think when you go to a writing retreat with the focus or the goal to write, you end up being more motivated because you're like, this is the reason I'm here. I am here to do this. Because a lot of the time writing gets pushed to the bottom of the list. You've got the dishes to do, or you've got to walk the dog, or you have to go to the shops, or whatever it is. It always ends up getting pushed back, 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 back. But when you go for one of these retreats, you're going for that purpose. And I think that kind of like the guilt of thinking that you need to do something else is just gone because you're like, I'm here for this. This is the thing I need to do. It's the top of the list. And that's the thing I think I really enjoyed the most. The last two that I went on were just, I called them mini writing retreats, but pretty much it was just me getting an Airbnb in the middle of nowhere and giving myself permission to write. And so I ended up
Okay.
having structuring it very similar to how I had been at the big writing retreat. So I had like set amount of time in the morning and the afternoon for writing, and then I had a in the middle I had a walk because I also brought my dog, and so we went on a nice long walk, and it kind of gave me time to think about the next chapter I was going to be working on. And then yeah, and then I spent the evenings either with another tiny writing session, or I started to build my query list for literary agents. So I had like a small list of things that I needed to do that were still book related. And so I could pick from that in the evenings. Whereas when I had the actual writing time that I had blocked out, I could just write. And I actually had the most productive time whilst I was there. I ended up editing a large chunk of the book both times. And so, yeah, I would recommend both going to writing retreats with other people just for like the networking and the motivation, as well as just getting yourself somewhere in the middle of nowhere where you can just write because it just takes away all the distractions and it gives you that permission to do the writing. And so, yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. I was going to ask you about the writing retreat. Do you do any kind of workshopping there, or is it just about mingling and meeting other writers, things like that?
Yeah, so for at the big writing retreat, Eden ran two workshops. The first one was a show versus telling workshop. So we were looking at ways to show versus tell and ways to tell rather than show, because you don't want to cut out all the telling. Because there are times when you actually do want to just tell someone or tell the reader what's happening. And then the second one was, oh, I can't remember off the top of my head, but she had another workshop as well. I think it might have been character building or something like that. And yeah, and
Okay.
so like in it, she built in like writing prompt type stuff, and so we did it in real time. So we ended up like writing a paragraph of some kind, and we ended up sharing it and talking about ways to strengthen it, which was really scary because that is someone reading something that you've written in front of you. So that was really scary, but it ended up being really nice because all the other authors were really lovely, and all of their feedback was instantly made the writing better, like instantly better. And so yeah, so the workshops were built in as well. We also had a little bit of mindfulness slash meditation workshops in the morning, and in between the writing times. So it was kind of like a writing time, meditation, lunch, workshop, more writing time type thing. So it was structured so that you kind of had breaks in between, so you weren't just writing for like 4 hours straight, because that can be a lot.
Yeah, how does the meditation help you?
So it was actually quite interesting because the way that she did it, uh, a different person. It wasn't Eden, so it was a different person brought in who actually is like certified to lead meditation, and so it kind of, the way she did it is she prompted or like structured it so that it involved writing. So it was kind of like opening yourself up to creativity, walking you through things that like you're trying to like open up yourself and let in like the energies, and just let yourself be creative and unblock all of the things that might be holding you back, things like that. So it was tied into the writing as well as calming you down too. And we did a cacao meditation, which was cool. So you know the bean that chocolate's made from. When you have it in
Okay.
its normal form, its like original form, it is really bitter. So you add some sugar to it, but it actually helps. It's like a natural stimulant. So it kind of like gets you energized. So like we ended up having like a little bit of a meditation with this drink, and then we ended up just like writing for like an hour and a half straight because we were all just like, oh my gosh, I have so many ideas. And so yeah, so it kind of fed into the creativity process as well.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. I mean, I have never done a writing retreat, but I've done like a master's degree in creative writing where there's a lot of workshopping. And the poet Sarah James, I interviewed her, what, 2, 3, 4 months ago now, actually. I met her, what, 15 years ago, maybe 12 years ago on this course. Um, I'm a big fan of them, to be honest. I'm a big fan of meeting other writers and doing some kind of workshop. And you're right, you meet them, you get tips and tricks. I like the fact that at your writing retreat, they've done, which are like classes or seminars on like different things, like show, not tell. Like for our master's degree, it wasn't like that. It was, there was workshopping, there was different tasks that you could or didn't have to do, like different prompts you could do, and then we did like a literature component, I think twice. Um, but that aspect of writing, I think, is really good. Like show, not tell. I've discussed that on this podcast a few times. How do you feel about, show not tell, or show versus tell?
Still working on building my showing versus telling skills, really. I found that I am very much a stage director with my writing. I think part of it is because I did drama and stuff as my background, and so I find a lot of the time that when I'm describing a room or what they're doing, it's very much like, he went here, he picked this up, he did that, and I'm like, oh no, what is happening? And so I have to go back and fix that. But that's what the editing stage is for. And so yeah, so I'm definitely trying to build my showing versus telling skills, and making it more automatic rather than having to read the chapter again and be like, oh gosh, I've just stage directed the whole scene. And so yeah, I think it's something that you have to practice, and I think you also kind of need to read it in other books. So you need to find sections of the books that you really like, and just kind of either copy it out or like study how they have done it. Because when someone says, oh, you need to show that they're angry, so you have to like show them like he clenched his fist, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. But when you get into a much more complicated scene, it becomes much harder to show everything. And so you have to pick out the bits that are most important. Otherwise, you end up having like a 200,000 word book. And so, yeah, I definitely think it's takes practice and to study it in the books that you're reading, because yeah, it's hard.
It's a great point, actually, that about books that you're reading. I've read quite a bit of Hemingway, and I think he's the master at showing. Sometimes he almost shows too much, where you're like, wait, what was that about? What happened? But I tend to think we show, not tell. There will be times, as you kind of intimated, that you will need to tell, want to tell. But I tend to think that, like, show, not tell, it's a great reference point. It's like the sunshine, the sun in the sky. That's what you're trying to aim for, and you can't always do it.
Yeah.
And like, I'm re-editing some of my Jack Strawn books at the moment, and I've gone back. Most of the time, I think I'm showing, and then I'll read something. I'm like, why am I telling so much? I thought I didn't do that. But that's life. And the amount of times I've read, a published novel, and it's telling. So other people do it as well. But like I said, I think it's just a great reference point instead of, I worry, like, I think maybe some writers, I think, just they tell all the time and think, yeah, it's fine. This famous writer said it's okay to tell. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think they really mean it like that. What I was going to ask you as well, Caitlin, is you also mentioned you've got an editor, and of course they organise a writing retreat. How did you go about getting an editor? How have they helped you, writing your book?
Yeah, finding an editor can be hard because there are a lot of great editors out there, and some of it is sending in a lot of most editors should offer a free sample edit. So it's sending in a page to them, and they'll edit the page, and then you can see if their style of editing and comments matches what you're kind of looking for. So I think that kind of helps as well. I actually found Eden through TikTok, glorious TikTok. She was running a course. It was like what's it like a webinar. She was running a webinar on how to plot a book. I think was the first one. She's done quite a few, and so I ended up signing up to that. And I've kind of done quite a few of her different types of webinars as well as some of the programs she runs. And I think through that I built quite a rapport with her that I now trust her with my work, which is I think part of it. You got to kind of find someone who you trust because they're going to be reading your work and ripping it apart to make it better. And so you have to be able to, you don't have to like technically really like them. I mean you should, but at the same time you need to trust them. And so yeah, so I ended up finding her through that and just building that rapport with her through various webinars and courses and writing retreats and things like that. And yeah, I recommend an editor to everyone really, especially, and there's different stages. Like my right now, I'm submitting my manuscript tomorrow actually, which is very exciting, to Eden for a developmental edit for a manuscript assessment. So it's not a full developmental edit, it's just like the condensed version of it. But I think because we're so close to our work and we have read that book so many times, we are not going to be able to see all of the iffy bits and all of the plot holes and where the things are sticky. And so I think especially a developmental edit should be done if possible, because that is the one that does all of the overarching stuff. So making sure that all of the subplots go all the way through the story, or that you don't just randomly introduce a character halfway through, or that the scenes actually flow. And that's one of the things that her assessment will say would be like, actually, I think like chapter 22 could probably be moved up, or you should add a chapter here, or this scene, nothing actually happens. You're going to have to cut it, which I'm going to be so sad when she says these things because I know something in there she's going to be like, you don't need that. And I'll be like, no, but they're getting to know each other. And she'll be like, no, it does not actually need to happen. And so, yeah, so I think having an editor, at least having someone look over your work, is definitely key to making sure that it's the best it can be, because you don't want it to be confusing for your readers because you know the story and you know what you're trying to say, but you don't know for sure that you're getting across that to the reader, because I know everything and I know all the background. And yeah, so I definitely think it's worth getting an editor, at least for the developmental edits, as well as copy and line edits, because then they get to find all the mistakes that you've glossed over throughout the whole novel. But developmental edits are definitely very important.
Sure. If you don't mind me asking, is it like cheap or expensive? That's always been my worry about editors.
Yeah, no, it depends on the editor. Usually it's like, I forget what, I've looked at so many of their rates, but it's like 0.01 or 0.02 or 0.03 cents to a word. So it's per word
Right.
count. So it depends how long your book is. So those of us who are doing like a romance novel and it's only 80,000 words are not going to pay as much as someone who is have like 100 to 120,000 words. So it's all word count
Sure.
based. The manuscript assessment is slightly cheaper as well because it's since it's not a full developmental edit. So it's not like with a normal developmental edit, she would be leaving comments in my manuscript throughout the whole thing. So it's much more like
Yeah.
in depth, step by step, whereas the manuscript assessment is a report that has pretty much similar stuff, but it's not as many comments or feedback that direction. It's more just like the overarching, like main points that you need to fix. And so the manuscript assessments can be slightly cheaper as well. Um, yeah, and to be fair, like it all depends on your budget, to be honest. And it takes a little bit of research and just seeing what the different um, rates are for the different editors and finding the one that matches you and your budget.
Great advice, I think. Yeah, it's something I've thought about intermittently over the last few years. I've not done it so far, but it's something I am actively considering. I was going to ask you as well, like you do a lot of Instagram videos. What got you into that? And, how does it help you, maybe advertise yourself or what do you learn?
Yeah, so I started them, I think properly. I say properly started them probably in November time as well, December, November of this past year. I had been posting them before that, but I wasn't really putting a lot of effort into those ones. Whereas now I'm kind of trying a little bit harder. And I think the main reason that I started was a little bit for um, marketing of myself, of just that reach of getting to know people, because you can write a book, but if nobody knows that you wrote a book, then how are you supposed to get people to read your book? Is pretty much the circle. And so I started doing those just to start to meet writers as well as readers, because I've met quite a few different writers on there, and it's just fun to have someone to talk to you about writing and just building that writing community where you can just be like, right, what do you do if this happens? Or what did you do when this came along? Or who did you go to for editing? And so building that community has been super fun, and I'm looking forward to building it more. And yeah, so it's pretty much just kind of getting myself out there so that people know that I exist. I think was the main reason. But the happy side effect of this was that I have fun with the videos. The videos are actually really fun, and they're kind of an accountability thing for me. So now that I have told the world that I'm writing a book, I now have to actually write that book and I have to finish that book. And so I think it kind of keeps me on track where I'm like, well, I can't stop because so many people are waiting to to read it now. Like I can't just be like, oh, sorry guys, I just didn't feel like doing it now. And so yeah, so I think it's kind of an accountability thing as well as getting to meet lots of people as well. Um, yeah, and motivation
Yeah, I like the
because
accountability thing.
yeah, and it definitely increases my motivation too. I think on the days where I'm like, oh, I haven't actually written anything, I'm like, well, I guess I'll write a paragraph or something, and then so I can have like some kind of video, and and then I end up writing more than a paragraph because I've actually sat down and started writing. So I think that kind of helps as well, just to keep it going.
Yeah, I think about video as well on Instagram. I think it's also another side of creativity. You video yourself, but then you get into like, subtitles and I do my own videos as well and you get them to, illuminate and stuff and
Yeah, it's
you think
fun.
about titles and it's fun and again for anyone else out there listening, it sounds like a lot of work, but these days it's not. A lot of the time, Instagram is doing it for you, especially with things like audio and cutting and I've got really quite quick at it. I can probably do one in 5 or 10 minutes now just for editing.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. And it is it you would think it takes a lot longer. And that's the trap that you fall into as well, is the ones that you end up spending like 10 minutes or forever, like ages editing and trying to make perfect. They end up not reaching as many people as the ones that you just did in a minute and just put it up there. Cuz I think a lot of social media is people looking for genuine people. So when you post the videos that are you
Yes.
just being a genuine person, that people identify with that a lot more. The the well edited ones are nice as well. I do like to see those too, and they are fun to make. But sometimes you have to just be your authentic self and post it out there for the world.
Yeah, I tend to think rewriting. Maybe for other things it might be different. Don't get me wrong, but as a writer, and when should I say, as a reader, when I want to, read other people's books, I want to know who the writer is and what they're like. So for an Instagram video, I just want people to just say it like it is and just go, "Hey, my name's John," and blah 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 blah. I sometimes you'll have seen this. There are videos in there that are a bit theatrical, and they're okay. But sometimes, like, I just want to say, "Hey, who are you? What's your book about?" I'd rather know that than this attempt at drama. To be honest, but it is what it is. We're all individuals, and we all do different things. I'd say. I was going to ask you as well, Caitlin. So obviously you're a fantasy writer, paranormal, etc. What are your favourite books, and how have they influenced your writing?
Right. Favorite books. I don't know if I have a small list of favorite books. I picked a couple, I suppose. As like a true millennial, and even now with the press of this author who is not as great. My favorite books were definitely the Harry Potter books. Growing up, I think that's what kind of got me into the fantasy genre, and I think that's the same with a lot of people, especially with people around my age who grew up um, in the 90s and the early 2000s. And yeah, I think that was kind of the base, the jump into the paranormal, and this idea of a world out there that could be there and you just don't see it, and it's just working alongside. And so I think those were definitely some of my favorite books growing up. And I think the ones that actually got me into seriously writing, the ones that inspired me to actually take my writing seriously, were the Akatar books, which are a gateway book for a lot of people into fantasy. I think Sarah J. Maas has gotten a lot of people to kind of see the fantasy genre, as well as fantasy with the romance elements, so the whole romantasy genre as well. Um, and yeah, those books kind of gave me the confidence to start writing. It was one of those where I was like, I could do this. I could do this. Like that this is my jam and I could totally do this. And yeah, so those are two of the ones that kind of got me into writing my like base as well as the current ones. My favorite books as a reader other than the Akatar books. I oh, this is such a hard question. Probably things like A Discovery of Witches are some of my favorite books too, as well as Spark of the Everflame. So this is a newer book that has just come out by Penn Cole, the new series. The fourth book is coming out this year, which is really exciting. And the I hadn't realized that I had kind of hit a reading slump recently. And I was reading books and I was enjoying them, but they weren't like capturing my soul like some books do. And then I read the Kindred Saga, the Spark of the Everflame series, and that was the first time where I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is what I've been missing for so long. Like these books are amazing." And so, yeah, if anyone listening, if you have not read Spark the Everflame, go right now because you will thank me later.
I'll remember it. I haven't read it either. Um, I should check it out. You mentioned Harry Potter. I mean, yeah, it seems like an easy thing to say. Yeah, yeah, read Harry Potter because a lot of people have, but I think sometimes we still need to remember that. I mean, Harry Potter, massive influence on my Jack Strawn books. As I'm rereading my Jack Strawn books, I was like, oh yeah, remember how like I originally touted it as like Harry Potter in space. I think, especially the first Harry Potter book, it's so good. Was it 76,000 words? You got a great plot. You've got how many great characters? Above 10, Great new world. There's very few books I think can do better with that word limit, in my opinion. And yeah, you mentioned about the different, like the magic and different worlds, and I like the kind of the alternative London or London beneath 5 feet, and so many other like writers have taken that and kind of done their own thing as well. And you mentioned Sarah J. Maas. I do need. I've not read any of her books. And I was just thinking about it today. I'm like, no, no, I need to romantasy. Yeah, romantasy is this big genre that seems to have exploded, and it's just gone right past me. So I should definitely check it out. And it's on my, it's not so much on my list as like in my mind somewhere. Next time I go on my like Kindle, I'll have a look at the Kindle store and see
Go
if
if
just
you're
see how
gonna.
much the books are and stuff.
Yeah, and I would start with the Throne of Glass series if you're going to start,
Oh
especially if
yeah,
romantasy esque or fantasy with romance subgenre isn't entirely what you normally read. Because Throne of Glass is much more like Lord of the Rings type esque, so it has more of the like high
okay,
fantasy in that regard, with the elements of romance woven in, but it's more of a fantasy. That one's more of the gateway. If you're not normally a romantasy reader, that one's the one you want to start with rather than her other two, which one the Actar is much
okay,
more romance heavy than the other books, and then her third series is urban esque. It's like, yeah, that one's completely different from the other ones, so it's more of an urban type of setting, but not urban as in like our world urban. So it's still very fantasy. It's a whole
okay.
different world, but it's more urban. So yeah, so definitely start with Throne of Glass if you do try to start some of her stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a good recommendation. Actually, I've definitely heard of it, so I should definitely check it out. Sure. What I was going to say as well, obviously, you're a new writer, you're working on your first book. Do you have any tips for anybody out there that's got an idea in their head and they're not sure should they be a writer? Have you got any tips for them?
Um, the thing is, you just need to write, really. Like most writers are don't have this like super special qualification or a super big stamp that says they're a writer and you're not. Like it's really just the fact that they had an idea and they saw it all the way through to the end. So you really just got to start writing, whether it is starting small with short stories, which is a great way to start getting into it if you're not ready for the commitment of a full on book, because it can be time consuming. So definitely just write, like just start writing. If you have this character that can't get out of your head, just start doing stuff with that character, like putting them in different situations, or giving them a super cool magic power and seeing what they do with it, like just starting to play with those ideas that are racing around in your head. um, Also, try to figure out if you're a plotter versus a pantser, because that's going to help you out in the long run. If you're somebody who just likes to discover as they write, like Pierce Brown with the Red Rising series, he wrote that entire thing just like just writing. Like there was no plan, he just wrote and it just came out of him. And like some people are like that. Sometimes a plot or like a plan just kills their creativity, whereas other people like myself or like V Schwab, we need a actual plan, and that kind of helps keep us on track. It helps us know where we're going with the story. I think I'm a bit of both. So I like to have a plan so I vaguely know where I'm kind of going and the kind of idea that I'm going with, but leaving enough room that whilst I'm writing, if a different idea kind of takes me, that I can just explore that idea, or I can go with it, or I can add it in. Because a lot of the subplots in my current book, they came through discovery writing. So it was stuff that I was like, oh, what if this happened? And so then I added that in, and it just fit the story so well. You have to be careful not to do that too much, because you can get carried away with discovery writing and you can go on a tangent for like 30,000 words, and then you're like, oh, I can't use any of this. This is a terrible idea. So you have to be somewhat careful with how far you let yourself go off on the tangents. But figuring out whether or not you like a plan, or whether or not you like to just kind of be creative with it. And it could be that you just have an idea for the start, some vague idea for the middle, and you know how you want it to end. And then you just kind of roll with it and see what comes out. Um, yeah, and I think the last one would be to read craft books, because there are a lot of books out there that will help you build your own craft, as well as taking classes online. There's things like Brandon Sanderson lectures, which are free on YouTube, so like listening to them, starting to get an idea about that. There's things like Save the Cat, which has like actual story structure type things. There's lots of stuff out there, and that kind of helps you build your own craft and get to know yourself as a writer as well, so that you do build the confidence that you need in order to see a project through to the end.
Yeah, what you're talking about, was it discovery versus outline writing? I'm very similar. I'm probably right in between. I have to have some type of outline, but it's usually not much more than a few grammatically incorrect paragraphs, like two. I always need to know my ending, and the ending might be vague. The planet blows up, something like that, and it's about getting to the bit where the planet blows up, and what does it look like when the planet blows up? If that makes any sense. If I don't have the ending, where am I going? I
Mm-hmm.
don't. There's so much could go wrong. I need to know the ending. I really, really do. I was going to ask you, so what, just out of interest, Caitlin, what's your writing routine like then? Do you write every day or most days? What kind of thing do you do?
So I, for the longest time, thought I was an evening writer because that is when I had the most free time. And then I finally had to accept the fact that I am a morning writer. I would, for the longest time, I would just come home and I'd be like, right, I need to write now. And I would sit in front of the computer and nothing would come out because my brain would just be so fried from the day. I would have no more creative juices. I'd have no more words left. And then I would feel awful because I wouldn't have written anything, or I would have written like two sentences. And then it just became this like vicious circle. I was like, well, I'm not going to write today because I just know nothing's going to come out. Once I flipped my schedule, so now I try to wake up about an hour earlier than I normally would. And so I get a writing session in the morning. And since then, I
Right.
have become so much more productive because that's when my brain is ready for writing. But I also took the pressure off of having to write because I'd already had that session in the morning. So then I was like, oh, I've already done that. So then if I did end up having extra time after work, then I could do that. But then I would be like, oh, I've already done that, so that's fine. And it's just like extra writing that happened. And so yeah, so I'm definitely a morning writer. I do tend to write every day, usually, unless something happens with my schedule or life, pretty much. But I do try to write every day. Yeah, so it takes a while to find your writing schedule, and I think you kind of just have to play around with it and try different times, try things that you didn't think you would like I definitely was 100% adamant that I was not a morning writer. Like, I was like, no, I'm not going to get up earlier just to write. Like, I've got plenty of time in the evenings, why would I do that? And then it turns out that was exactly what I needed. So just playing around with it, I think, is the key to figuring out what time is best for you.
Yeah, it's a good point about playing around with it. I tend to I think if we're all lucky and we have 20, 30, 40 years career as a writer, I think will change so much. And I think we have to be flexible enough to go, oh, my life is like this at the moment. I need to keep writing. So therefore I have to make this commitment. I started out writing poetry in the evenings. I thought I was a nighttime writer. Loved it. And then I just completely switched and started writing only in the mornings for a long, long time. And then recently I've got like a, very young family, and my kid's really young. And so I find these days I'm writing all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Like every day, sure. But like sometimes writing, on a computer in a taxi to and from school. Other times a little bit at school, a little bit at work. Sometimes now, because my kid's going to bed a bit earlier, now he's starting school, I try to do writing or editing as it is at the moment at home. But you're right, sometimes you're beat.
Mm-hmm.
But I always say to myself, okay, if I'm really tired, if I'm dead tired, I'll say to myself, just give me 20 minutes, 30 minutes, especially if it's just editing. I'll just do 20 or 30 minutes. And I always find I do a bit more. And I always find that, but the next day, I'll get more done,
Mm-hmm.
but I find I have to be flexible at the moment. Unfortunately, I have to get up every morning at the moment at 6. And I think if I was to get out an hour early at 5,
You
I'm not going to survive.
never know until you try,
Um,
right?
Yeah, but if I had to get up at 6 to do writing, yeah, no problem. And I've done that before. I've done what you've done. Sometimes it's the best thing, maybe the only thing you can do as well. I think it depends on your schedule. Caitlin, what time do you wake up in the morning then to do writing?
You're gonna love this. I wake up at 5.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good for you. Good for you.
I know. I
I
I was the same where I
take
was
off
just
my
like,
cap.
I can't do it. 5 a.m. is not a real time. Like that's ludicrous. And then yeah, I think I started doing it where I just made it like 15 minutes earlier than my time because I used to wake up at 6 as well. And then I was like, all right, I'll wake up at 5:45 and just do like a really quick session. And then I did that for like a week. And I was like, okay,
Mhm.
now I'll do it at 5:30. And then did it for a week. So I kind of like
Oh,
inched my way towards 5. I didn't go
that's a
cold
good
turkey
idea.
and just start doing 5 because it is really early. It is really early. Luckily, here it's a lot easier now because in Scotland in the spring, it's light at 5 a.m. So your brain's kind of tricked into thinking that it's a normal time of the
Yeah.
day when it is super early. In the winter, it is a lot harder because it is just pitch black for so long outside. But yeah,
Yeah, I can imagine.
yeah,
Maybe I'll give it a go. Like I say, we're moving this summer, and I think my schedule will change somewhat. And it might be that, if I'm going to school, maybe I wake up at 6:30. So maybe I could definitely wake up at 5:30 and write. I could do that. Five, I find it hard sometimes to go to bed at a reasonable hour. I go to bed. I should be going to bed at 10:30, 11 at the latest. But if I was going to bed at 11 or 10:30 and waking up at 5,
yeah, that was the biggest adjustment for me as well.
I'm dying. I'm dying.
Yeah, because I'm usually a half 10, 11 sleeper as well. And when I started waking up at 5, I was like, I have to go to bed at half 9. Half 9. Like, I'm a granny now. What is this? But yeah, that
Yes.
I think was my big adjustment too. Because if I kept the same time for bed, I woke up so tired and then I was just grumpy. And so it didn't work out. So yeah, that part is hard. I think that was harder than waking up early, was starting to go to bed early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, to be fair, you're making me think about it now, and that's one of the reasons why I do these podcasts to just learn from other riders and consider, different things. Just one final question before we wrap things up. AI, it's the big hot topic in writing and publishing these days. What is your take on it?
Yeah, so it's here and it's not going away. Ever probably. And big publishers use it. They're not currently using it to generate books or anything like that, but they use it for like marketing, for audiobook narration, translation, spotting data trends, all that stuff. So they're already using it. I personally won't use it for any part of my creative process. I know others use it for like a search engine or to research things or to help them plot the story and stuff like that. And I personally, I just want my book to be 100% me. Like it came purely from my brain. Um, and it might be like it's from my brain but also from like the influences that influenced me because obviously every book has influences from other books or other stories and whatnot and they're woven in, but I want it to be that amalgamation of my ideas and the stuff that influenced me rather than using AI to do that. So yeah, so I personally won't use it. Other people I know do, and that's just their personal preference, really, because it's here to stay. So you kind of just have to work around it or what have you.
Yeah, interesting take on things, to be honest. I'm trying to ask this question to every writer that comes on the show now. Yeah, I don't have it in my creative process at all. Zero. Don't feel like I need it, to be honest. I like what you said about the publishing companies because I didn't realize it was that widespread. I know they're using it in sales and I know they're using it with things like comp titles, but I didn't realize they were using it for audiobook narration and translation. That's pretty big. I do think it's here to stay, and I think it's only going to get better. I'm a big believer that I think in the future AI will be very good at writing average books. And average books still might sell well. That doesn't mean it's not a best. There's plenty of bestsellers and not necessarily good books, but I don't think it's going to write, a top novel that will still be with us in 100 years' time and makes people think in different ways, like say of Mice and Men or something like Macbeth, Hamlet, anything like that. I just don't think it's possible.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it'll
I,
never have the the human element, which is what makes all of those
Yeah.
books good. Like it won't be able to make the characters relatable enough because it isn't a human, so it can't relate to us. So how would it make its characters relatable? Yeah, it's a whole
Yeah, I
topic
mean,
of conversation.
yeah, you were saying about the book you're writing and about how like the main character, you know, they're afraid and they're in the book they're working to overcome their fears. How can an AI truly understand fear if they don't feel fear? I mean, if they do feel fear, but I think they would feel a simulation of fear, and that's like acting, isn't it? You know, again, just because you're a great actor doesn't mean you're a great writer because you simulate things. So I'd be very surprised if it gets to that level, to be honest. But I think it's here to stay. I think it's going to be in book cover design a lot more than I think we realize. I think that it's getting to that stage where it'll do things quicker, better, cheaper, and I think that's just going to. I think it's going to go into editing. I think I know you're not using you're using obviously a human editor. Again, I wonder about the publishing companies. You know, I think they will maybe, for example, copy editing. You know, just spotting typos and stuff, or counting how many times you use the word suddenly. They might start using it for things like that. I would probably say, to be honest.
Yeah, I could see that definitely. I know of a couple writers who use it as an editing tool as well. And yeah, I just don't want to feed myself into the AI brain, if you will.
Yeah, I don't need it at all. Right, Caitlin, I think we can end things there. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I've had a lovely time talking about writing and my writing journey, and I hope those who are listening take something away from our chat.
Well, I'm sure they will. I mean, especially the stuff about editors and you know the writing retreats, writing routines, 5 o'clock starts. Love it, love it. I mean, I love hearing about your book as well. And yeah, let me know and let everybody know, like you know, further on the line, how you're doing, you know, with the book, and you know whether you're going to submit to agents, for example, whether you're going to do the indie publishing route. Let me know. Let everyone know. I think it's you know it's really interesting to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be posting updates on both TikTok and Instagram under KJ Author, KJ
Yeah,
Holmes
looking
Author.
forward to it.
Yeah, it should be good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I'll see you later.